Welcome to Clear Vision Wednesday. I'm Claudia Mühlenweg. I'm the founder of the Natural Clear Vision Institute, and today is one of the most important Clear Vision Wednesdays that I've done in a long time, maybe since the beginning of this show in like 5 years ago or 4 years ago. I lose track. Anyway, make sure to subscribe to this channel, click the little bell icon so that you will never miss an episode like the one today that's going to change your life. I promise you. We have on the show today somebody who was here before, and I'm going to introduce him in a second before I bring him on. So Dr. Ray Gottlieb is a legendary vision teacher and a former behavioral optometrist, and he will talk to us today what we need to do to avoid, where am I? I don't have reading glasses, but to avoid those nasty crutches that you need to read at the small point. So welcome to the show, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I know you were really, you had a really hard few months with Hurricane Helene destroying your home, and it's not been easy. And you said you just had construction in your condo happening. So thank you for being here. So tell us a little bit about, obviously you're now retired, but you had a really thriving behavioral optometry practice. You told me you had a vision gym in Santa Monica in the 80s, way before everybody was ready to do this kind of work. So tell us a little bit about, when we get 40, 50, and the eye doctor says, your eyes are just getting more stiffer and we can't read that small print anymore, and all of a sudden we're squinting or needing those reading glasses. What is happening with the eyes? Why is this happening?
People don't really know exactly why it's happening. There's several different theories about what's going on. Some of them from the late 1800s uh, and so forth. So, although the view of that is changing because they always thought it was the front part of the eye that the muscles got weak, and that caused the eyes not to be able to focus. Um, but now more and more, um, I just wanted to give a plug for Bates, because Bates said, no, it's the length of the eye that changes. And that's becoming more accepted idea. So it's not just the front part that causes the lens not to be so good. Um, and and also well, I don't need to go into serotonin, um, but it's very common. It's hard to escape it. I once wrote a thing and I started it saying, middle age is when um, Father Time catches up with Mother Nature. And because right about that time, there's a lot of things that go on, uh, and uh, and it's so one of the things that shows up the first is that you begin to not be able to read without glasses. And that happens. It used to be in the late 30s, but people are younger now at older ages. So it's more like the early 50s or late 40s that it happens to people. And uh, and then after a while, you have to get a stronger pair of glasses, and then you need an even stronger pair. And pretty soon, not only do you need to have glasses for near, but you also have to have distance glasses. It's like being farsighted. And anyway, uh, so that's the problem. And I was teaching a class. This is how I came across this idea. I was teaching a course, a Bates course, and I think we met for 2 hours for 10 weeks, once a week for 10 hours. So pretty much everybody was younger, like 20s and 30-year-olds, females. But this one guy was a 53-year-old man. And he said to me, I hate wearing my glasses. Now I have to wear glasses for distance as well, uh, as I mentioned before. And I just hate the glasses. I lose them and so forth. And And so I'm taking this course for that purpose. And so we taught a couple of weeks. It was Mayor Schneider and I were doing this together. And so we were, and I kept thinking, now what can I do for Paul? You know, he's different. I hadn't had anybody with presbyopia. And
Can we
I
pause
thought
for a
about
sec?
it.
Can we pause for a second? So presbyopia is the official word for losing that near vision,
Yes.
needing reading glasses, right? So that's presbyopia, Paul. That's an alliteration. So Paul got you to think like, what else can I do for Paul, uh, right, to help him with this close-up vision beyond what the Bates techniques were. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is there
go ahead.
anything else I could do?
Yeah.
And that was the idea. And he was a real nice guy. And and he was a vice president of Lockheed Corporation. Anyway, he was good. And anyway, so I know that there's a connection in the brain that if you um, look real close, it causes your eyes to converge. And convergence is when your lines of sight, instead of being straight ahead in front of you, uh, they meet closer to you than where you're looking. So convergence and divergence is farther apart. So it's this looking at this angle. So convergence, I would look here, I look even closer, I look even closer, I'm looking less, converging. So that's what it is. The lines of sight are converging. So I know from the studies that I learned in optometry school that there's a connection between when you cross your eyes, it causes you to see to see better at near. And so if I put a prism on a young person uh, and made their eyes converge, then I could measure their focus of their eyes and find out that yes, they're focused now for a nearer point. So it's called accommodation. Is this idea that you change the diopters, the strength of your ability to see closer and closer, and um, and then there's convergence, which I just mentioned a second ago. So I thought to myself, now with a young person, put the prism on this person, they're converged, a young person, 20 years old, and I measured their eyes, I could see that their eyes got stronger, more, so they could see better at near. But the question was, would that still happen to somebody who had presbyopia? Was it just the young persons or pre-presbyopic people? And so that was the first question. And the second question I asked myself was, if it did, if converging caused them to see better at near, um, what would happen if they kept exercising that? If they did that over and over again, would that actually cause them to be able to read at near without having to use converging? So, could I actually correct their ability to see without having to put glasses on, um, just by doing this? And would it happen to a presbyope? Um, so if you're going to cross your eyes, you're going to see double. So they can't cross their eyes and then try to see double. It would be too confusing. But if you have two charts or two circles, then one eye, and you crossed your eyes. So you have two circles that are next to each other, separated, like my two eyes are. Um, yeah, or those wonderful dots.
Just
Um,
with a
okay, so,
Sharpie.
so
Yeah.
if you just crossed your eyes, you would see two. If you only had one uh, dot up there, but if you have two dots up there, and one eye looks at the one on the right eye looks at the one on the left, and the left eye looks at the dot on the right, then uh, it'll actually cause you to see three dots. And the middle dot is not going to be doubled. And what it is that when you cross your eyes, you're going to see two dots instead of one, if that's all there were. And then the other eye, uh, if you cross your eyes, is going to see the two dots if there was only just one dot up there. But as I converge in the right way, my fingers, you can see that I'm seeing double with this eye, double with this eye. But if I bring the charts close enough together, I'm going to see 3 of these because they've overlapped. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically I had 2 dots before, but if you do the exercise right, so your point is and I did it with my reflection in the computer. It actually worked. So you cross your eyes in front. You don't look at the page. If you just to be clear, right? When you look at the page, you only see two dots, right? But you were asking us to cross our eyes in front of the page, and then what you like, obviously the distance of these is not right. And looks like a tomato that fell on the floor. But the point is, you will basically, what you're saying, Ray, is like you would see 3 circles, like this. When you do the convergence right, again, you're crossing your eyes in front of the page. Yeah, that's why I usually tell people to have a finger or something so that they have a focal point. Yeah, okay. So does everybody get that? The idea, and show your little hair, you showed me these little hair circles or hair bands. That's I love that you had those earlier. So tell us a little bit about the story, what you do with the cat, and how you end up using everyday objects to practice this idea of convergence.
Well, I think we have that. That was just a few months ago or
But
more.
the point is that you
This was,
found something in everyday life, because instead of
yes,
everybody worrying about having the right tools, you can really use other things in your life. Yeah, okay. You don't have those anymore, the little hair bands you just showed
I
me.
do, but that's coming.
Oh, that's coming later. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'm jumping ahead.
Okay. So the idea is I wanted to be able to cross his eyes so that he could focus closer. Um, but if I had him cross his eyes, then he'd see double. And then he's not going to, he would not be able to actually do it. But if I have 2 double charts and I move them in a way that the 2 are in the middle or overlapped, then the eye kind of grabs onto that and it looks like single, just in that one spot. On the sides are the other dots. But where he's looking, where he's aiming at, is going to be right uh, in a way that he will not see double. He'll see 3 things, but the middle one won't be double vision. Okay, so that was the way to handle that problem. So I made up a chart. You know what a visual acuity chart is, where you have a big E on the top, and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller. I figured you'd have one of those, but they also have small ones, so you can measure the distance, the vision at near. So I made up a chart of 2 of those little charts like that one you just showed us. And I said, okay, how far down can you see? And you could only see the big E on that chart, little chart. And I said, okay, do you know how to cross your eyes? Now, some people don't cross their eyes. They're afraid because their grandmother told them it would make
Oh
their eyes.
yeah, I remember that. Don't do that. You're going to ruin your eyes, right?
But it's very helpful to do that. Anyway, um, so he said, yeah, I can cross my eyes. And he crossed his eyes and he immediately saw 3 charts because we were using the chart. And, and, um, and then he said, oh my goodness, the letters are much blacker than they were before I crossed my eyes. And then he said, oh, and I can see 3 lines better, the big E and then the ones below that, 3 lines better. And that was immediate. I was really thought that was great. So I thought, okay, here's the chart. See you next week at the meeting. And so he came the next week and I went running over and I said, how are you doing? What's happening? And he said, can I have 5 more charts? And I thought, well, maybe he wants one for his wife, so forth. Why do you need 5 charts? He said, I love the exercise. I love how it feels. And not everybody does that. He happened to be the first person I used. He was an easy patient. So I said, he said, I want 1 for the bathroom, 2 for the bathroom, actually. I want 1 for my desk. I want 1 for the TV room. I want 1 for the kitchen. And I want 1 for my office. And I want 1 for my car. He commuted to work And so he would be waiting in the lot for the train to come so he could get on the train. So he just did it all the time that he could. So then he came back the next week and he came running over to me and he said, I read all day at work, a lot of reading, but I don't need my glasses anymore, except if it's really dim light. But I can read just as easily as I could without my glasses. And he said, and I can see even in the fog, even at night or raining, I can see distance just as well without my glasses as with my glasses because he was wearing a bifocal. So anyway, that was amazing. It was 11 days. I said, how'd you do that? He said, I just love the exercise. I go to work and I close the door and I sit on my swivel chair. I pull my charts out and I'd spin around. I mean, he just really loved the exercise. So that really helps to like to do it and to not, and some people, you know, their eye, it kind of hurts their eyes. So then, yeah, so it's very important if you start to feel discomfort in your eyes when you're doing this, um, stop and just relax for a while. So then just do it for a very short time. Don't get really bad in that situation. But you could several times a day to do it. So that would be one way around the fact that in his case, and the woman that I taught in that um, video that we talked about. Anyway, so he did that, and I was just amazed. And I didn't start teaching it right away because I was already doing so many bizarre things. It was back in the early 70s. It was in the 70s. So I was already doing a lot of crazy stuff. And they thought I was nuts, my colleagues.
Well, that's what
I
made
didn't
you a
mention,
legend and a successful teacher because you were always coming up with new ways of doing it.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the story of it. And it works amazingly well with a lot of people. I didn't actually do a study of it, have, 200 people and one group doesn't do the exercise. I didn't do that. But if anybody has that kind of skill, I would like to see that happen. But anyway, so a lot of people. So your patients or your students that you give it to, um, Claudia,
Yeah,
they'll
we
be,
have, I put a link on YouTube as well. So the chart that you then later create, it wasn't just the miniature version of this, right? But you ended up creating this. I'll be talking about the presbyopia reduction chart, which has small print in different sizes on this page, right? That's the one that are we talking about this right now, Ray?
yeah, but we should probably see if they can converge those dots. The
Yeah,
one,
yeah. That's why we started with the dots. We started with the two dots that, when you converge across your eyes, or you see three. So that's the first part, so that you do that in
do they have dots? They don't have dots.
they don't have dots, but everybody can just use a Sharpie or just draw them on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter. You can make circles. At the end of the day, it's about two objects, and the dots I felt are easier, right, than some other things. So you do that first, and if you watch this as a video, do that first, maybe pause the video and then come back to us so until you can do it. And I found, Ray, I don't know what I could do it easily right away, but I was born with a convergent squint. I actually had prisms in my glasses as a kid. And so converging was always easy for me. My problem was the other way, which we're not talking about today.
I thought I
Um,
would talk about that.
yeah, but my point is sometimes it helps for people to, have the circles, whatever you use, and to use a pen or a finger as a point to look at. Because again, you don't want to look at the page because then you see only two circles, right? When you have or
Yeah.
dots.
Or if you just put that down for a second and look at the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now everybody hold a finger up between where she is and where your nose is, and and see whether you can create two Claudias.
I have twinsies. I'm twinsies now.
Right. So I don't know what kind of feedback you're getting, but
Um, I got some, Jane wrote, like probably not sure. I think what happens initially is, so right now you ask us to like one me to make two out of me, or make what you use your finger. You can use that with anything. I mean, I have a water bottle on my desk, and if I look at the finger, I see two water bottles. So it doesn't matter, right, what it is. We just use it,
Right.
look at the finger, keep looking at the finger, and notice in your environment that things are doubling up, whatever it is. So that's the first step, correct?
Yes.
Got you. Yes, we see yes, yes, yes in the chat. So far, we see several people said yes. Okay, let's assume everybody got this. Next, let's move on.
Okay, so then if you have that other chart you just showed,
The presbyopia reduction
yeah.
chart. This one.
So you see in the second paragraph that there are two dots there.
You mean this one here?
No, the one that's underneath, that's it.
Yeah, the top one.
You see two dots, but if you crossed your eyes by using your finger or just crossing your eyes, that would make you'd see three dots. So you can point to the dots.
Those two dots, and I have you created an image for us. Should I share my screen really quick to show what people should expect to see? Maybe
Yeah,
that's okay. I will have to give me 1 second. I will have to do a little screen share and give you an idea what this is supposed to look like. 1 second, just the right image. Okay, I'm sharing my screen for a moment, guys. So give me a moment. So basically, what Ray is talking about, when you look at this chart and you cross here and you look at, in this example here, the finger the person is showing, you should see three dots. And because the dot is on the paragraph of text, you will see a fifth column of text. So I will stop my screen share, right? That's what they're seeing.
yeah,
Correct?
just
And if they do it
yeah,
right, it's like a
and the
3D.
finger should be about halfway between your nose and the page.
Correct. Okay. So finger roughly halfway between the page and yep.
And so, some people it's real easy. It was for Paul. By the way, he came to my office about 3 years later, and his vision was actually even better. Instead of 2020, it was 2015,
Wow.
near and far. And I said, "How did you do that? That's great." He said, "I love the exercise. I do it all the time." So that was the clue.
So we got a comment here that said, it works for me, but my eyes are hurting after that. What do you say to somebody before we continue with the chart? So like, I think that's an important message because like you said, for some people this is easy, like it was for me, but for other people it might not be easy or it hurts their eyes. What is your tip for that?
Just don't do it. Do it later on. Do it for just short a period of time because you don't want to create a lasting kind of pain there. So and I had another idea too. What was it?
Maybe some palming, some palming.
Yeah, bombing would work, and so you just want to ease yourself into it. And oh, I know what it was. It's very important that the two O's are in your head. See, now if I tried to do it this way and cross my eyes, these two are straight, horizontal. If I tip my head, it's going to put a big strain on my eyes.
Okay,
Or
that's really important, right? So say that
or
again. We need to make sure our head is straight, correct? That's what you said.
and
Like
if your
not
head was straight and the two dots were like this, and you tried to fuse them, uh, again, you're going to get a lot more discomfort. So make sure that you're not tipping.
That's a really important point because I don't know, Ray, when I worked with clients one-on-one, a lot of times somebody would have like a head tilt or a rotation or so I have a question. I don't know, let's continue first and then let's look at questions at the end, right? Let's continue with the chart because there's more to do. So what is the next step when you see the three dots in the fifth column? What is the next thing to do?
Well, so some people have to stay with their finger up there for a while. But it's possible to kind of look and see one thing in the background, the middle dot in the background. Okay, but if you look at the middle dot in the background, it's going to it's going to disappear because you're not converging anymore. So it's like, I look here and I see three of my face, and right about here, it became two of me. So, but if there's anyway, so the point is that at some point you have to move your where you're aiming, while you're looking from you have to keep converging, but not by looking at the pen or your finger. We so that's a difficult step, which is to be able to look at the word cross, which is the top big word, and not lose it by losing your convergence.
I'm showing the screen again really quick for everybody. So what you're saying is this word cross, right? Obviously the picture here is a little blurry. It's a screenshot from a video, but obviously this will be really clear if you do it right. But initially when you said you might need the finger or the pencil or something, but the goal would be that you keep that converged gaze with a third dot in that fifth paragraph without using the finger, right? So that you get to the point where you can just do it by, like, for me, it's easy. I just look at this thing and I can cross my eyes and it's easy. It's immediately there. And
Yeah.
so, and I immediately notice how there's a 3D effect to the text where the middle, the new fifth paragraph is kind of like a column is kind of recessed. It's a little further back.
Yeah.
What are we supposed to do next after we've been able to cross this and see the paragraph?
Um, then you start looking at the text of the middle one. You got to have that fifth one. You got to be aware of the depth. It's a little bit deeper behind the other paragraphs. So it's something to help you stay there without losing your convergence.
It's
You
so
can take the
fascinating
finger.
how much this helped me so much. Because as a farsighted person who had presbyopia as well, like how what you said, what Paul described, how immediately my text was not because I worked on my vision for a long time, but let's say it was a little blurry and I did this thing immediately was like super black and clear. And I could read all the way down to the smallest print, which sometimes, I wasn't able to do. So the point is what you said. Once you have that third dot in the fifth pair, obviously column, you now slowly start moving your attention while you're holding that converged gaze. You're slowly
Yeah.
moving your attention down. Okay. What else are we doing?
Um,
What about
converging.
these dots? What about these big dots? What about these big ones here?
Well,
Do you
let's
want
just
to?
keep going. I'll just keep going. So, um, yeah, so you have the three dots, what we were talking about before. If you begin, and what happens to a lot of people is they're supposed to be like about that. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah. So, it's like that much. And because they're trying hard, they'll sometimes pull everything really close and then they can't do it anymore. Or they'll stop looking at the finger and they'll look at the page. And then they go, oh my God, I lost it. There's a lot of that when you're learning a new thing. Say, no, just put your finger up, have it about it this far away. So that's important to know because it's when you lose that distance. So um, so then you can see the word, what was the top word? Cross.
Cross.
So cross your eyes. So you say, okay, I'm now, you may have to still keep your finger up there, but you might be able to take your finger down and still keep three dots and see the word on the middle paragraph, see the word cross. Now it's easy to see that is because it's very big. But then you start to try to go down your eyes. Well, so you're going down. So how much? So by the way, first thing to do before you do any of this is to say, how far down the page can I see without converging? Something to make like something to kind of give you a starting point, and then find out. Say now I can read five lines lower, smaller.
So you're talking about this, like doing a check-in, what you did with Paul, where you said initially he could just see the big E only without doing the convergence. So a way to check your vision first is just look at the page regularly, like you would look at a book, and then noticing what is the smallest you can read, and then do the exercise. And then let's assume you don't have pain and you can do it. How long do you recommend doing it for?
Well, six 6 minutes.
Okay.
That wasn't my recommendation. That was Marty Sussman's.
Oh, Marty Sussman, who's
Mhm.
a former colleague. I had never met him, but he passed away. But you also said that Paul did it everywhere. I think that's an important point I wanted to highlight, that he asked you to get like all these different versions so that he could do it throughout the day and not just do like one time in the morning, the 6 minutes and whatever, and then you're done, right? So he kind of kept doing it throughout the day. I think that's an important thing
Yeah.
to remember, right? That we make it fun. Also, it seemed like he talked about him being in the swivel chair and doing it while moving around. And so what is the progression once people can do it? They see things like because I also wonder about these other dots, and you talked about him moving around. So what is the next level that people can do?
Well, the next thing would be to do kind of baits on yourself, which is to say, oh, my threshold, or the place where it's a little bit clear, but not quite clear. So then you just kind of look at that and try to relax, change the light, make it a little brighter, and gradually you will see a little bit better. Uh, so the, the there's several reasons why instead of just two columns, I've got 4 columns, right? And because if I converge more, right now I'm converged on the 2 dots, right? But if I'm looking at the word clear, and the middle one has that depth to it, uh, if I converge my eyes a little bit more, so that one eye is looking at the far left um, paragraph, word clear, and the other eye is looking at the second one from the right. In other words, when you, to some, with some limits, converging more increases your focus. So you can play around with uh, looking at, like, instead of the two next to each other, the two that are
You
one.
mean these two? You mean these two?
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is the part where now it's much bigger difference space between them, so you have to converge even
more.
more. So this is a next level. That's what you're talking about. This is easy, then try this one and make a third dot here, correct? That's what you just,
No, that's something else.
okay. I thought,
Okay, so I'm just saying. So, for example, if you had a couple of charts and you cut your chart in half and you held them next to each other as if they were connected, and then you gradually pull them apart. So you're crossing your eyes, okay, and uh, and you're pulling the two halves apart. So to keep 3, you're having to converge more. You follow that?
yeah. So basically, I'm trying, yes, that's why I'm
Mhm.
asking all these questions to make sure that we all get exactly what you're explaining us. So I don't have scissors, but basically it's if I'm cutting, like assume like I'm just pulling them apart so that the dots are further away from each other, which makes it more challenging.
Yeah. And if one eye looks at one and the other eye looks at the other, you
Right,
have to be converging more.
right.
When you converge more, then it gives you more focus.
Okay, we got that.
So that's
Okay.
important. And don't be afraid of that. So there's 2 major things besides the size of the text. One of them is how far are you converging? Because the more you converge, the better your chances of seeing it clearly. Okay.
So it's like,
Yes.
okay, got it. I just want to make sure everybody gets what we're talking about. I'm a visual learner, so if I don't see a picture, I don't, yeah, here we go. Okay, so making it further away.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
the other thing that improves your vision, and you should do this when you're practicing, is light. if it's dim light and you're working on making yourself see further and further down the page, I used to like to go out in the sun and turn my back to the sun and do it, and I could see much, much better. And it encouraged me to practice more. And then I would kind of go a little bit into the shade. So, I mean, what Bates did was, you kind of find the point, the threshold of when it's blurry versus when it's not blurry. And then you're working at that distance. See, what can I do? Can I relax myself in a certain way? Can I breathe differently? Is there anything I can do uh, to, to bring it out? And then eventually your brain learns how to do that. Um, so yeah, so that's what it is. So now we get to the other dots.
Okay, finally. I'm ready to go to the next level dots. Okay, so we're talking about these guys.
Okay, so if you notice on the two top dots, on the paragraphs that there's no dots, instead of a dot, there's a white area.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah. Here there's a white area.
So the dots that are on the two middle ones are not covering up any text. But, okay, now you can pull it up, pull the page up.
All the
Okay.
way? Okay.
Yeah, so now if instead of converging,
Yeah.
I to keep holding it up.
Sorry, I have to change my video settings, you guys. Sorry about doing this. I have the portrait lighting on. It always ends up blurring things. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm holding up the whole page.
Okay. So the two on the top, the two dots there, you're going to be converging them. Okay. But if you went down to the next line of paragraphs and you moved your eye over so that one eye was looking at the dot and the other eye was looking at the print with no dot, that it's right next to it.
These two, yeah.
Yeah. And what you would see in the middle is the overlapping of the two, like what I talked about with the top two dots. You converge, one eye looks at one, the other eye looks at the other, and it looks like
this with these two here.
yeah, that's what you would get. Okay?
Yeah.
And what you see is that that dot, unlike the two dots above that don't cover any print, the other paragraphs, the big dot on that, you have to hold that up now so we can see it.
Sorry, I'm trying to do it right now. Sorry.
Okay, so if you're converging, I can't point to it, but if you're converging the one on the left with the second one from the left, then
These
you're
two.
overlapping just like you were on the top ones, but you're not going to see if you have one eye that's stronger, for example, than the other. Okay, and well, let me just back up for a second. This is going to help you look with both eyes and have both eyes be equally strong. Because if you're looking at the two paragraphs on the left on that second line, and you have the dot on overlapping the next paragraph, and your good eye is aiming at the paragraph, and the other eye is aiming at the dot, then you're going to be able to see. It's hard to explain this.
I know it's hard to explain because I think we need the visuals. So I can also post the link to the other video that you guys created back in the day where you see some of those effects, right? What you're supposed to see.
Well, yeah, but what happened was, I know we spent a lot of time with me teaching her just what we're teaching, me teaching the thing. He didn't use any of that. It's the first time it's been, what, 50 years almost. And finally, I got a copy of the movie, and all that work that we did. Anyway, the point is that you don't have to do this with the other dot, the big dot.
Okay, so the main
but
purpose is doing these two, right? It's really
those two and the paragraphs that are next to each other.
right.
Okay, the reason that I'm using dots on that top one is that it's easier to converge them. It's easier to see those dots. If you were trying to look just at letters, then it's more confusing. But the big
Right.
dots, so that's why I use dots there. And if you look at the very bottom, uh, you see that those dots
Those,
on the top of that second to the bottom line, those dots are just like the very top ones in the whole chart. Those are to be able to converge.
so those two that are all the way at the edges. So there's should be an ability to converge and see a third one here.
Uh,
No?
yeah,
Yeah.
except it's a pretty big convergence to
Well, let's
converge the
see.
outer ones. So it
I
would
can
be
do it.
converging the outer one and the one next to it.
Yeah, I can do it. But that again, that is so, guys, you're saying start with the easy stuff, get that down, and then before you start trying the other dots, but you can always read the text all the way, right? What I found so cool about this chart, Ray, is when you got these three dots and you hold your gaze converged, I was able to read that. I didn't even look at all these other dots. I was just able to read all the way to the smallest print really easily, right? So even that itself is a fantastic exercise. And then if you want to get to these more challenging things, like that's another level. Like you can do that later.
Yeah, I mean, it was just something that I did. I mean, there's little tricks in there. Like, for example, that little chart on the top with the E on top.
Yeah.
Uh, if you actually start from the end and work your way backwards, like the smallest line on the right side, and you begin to work reading one. So it turns out that that's a message. For example,
Oh, there's a message in the letters going
yeah, so
backwards.
going backwards through. So for
Oh,
example, that E
okay.
on the top, that E
Sorry,
on
I did never discover this, so I didn't try it. Tell us what.
that E on the top is the E from the word breathe.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
if you go
got
further
it.
down,
So, okay, you're like, this is cool. So when you do B-R-E, breathe. Okay. Oh my God, I never noticed that, right?
yeah, anyway, that
You're
I was
so
just full
great
of I was just
coming.
full of creativity when I did this.
But you always, this is the thing about you, Ray. You're so creative, and I think the message really want everybody to get is that once you understand the principle of a technique, right, use, you can be creative. You've always came up with new versions of things just to get it, like make it more fun, make it more interesting. Maybe once in a while you had a patient who didn't get it, and then you came up with another version of the same principle or exercise, right? So
Right.
I always appreciate that about you when you taught us all these new little games. All right, what else do you want to say about this chart or the practice of convergence? Any other? And then we
I
have
was
lots
just
of
gonna
questions.
tell a story. So
Yes, tell us all. Good.
coincidentally, it happened just when I was trying to get on a plane from spending the day with Marty Sussman to create that movie. Um, I called my brother, and he was in LA. Called my brother, and his wife answered, and he said he's not here. And I said, oh, as long as I have you on the phone. She had called me several years before, uh, and is there anything I can do? My doctor tells me I need bifocals. Is there anything I can do? And I said, oh, of all the people to ask in the world, is there anything? I said, yeah, we were going to go out to California for a couple of weeks later. And I gave her a chart, taught her how to do it. And and then 12 years later is when I was making that movie. And I called my brother and she answered. And I said, well, by the way, um, how are your eyes doing? And she said, well, yesterday I was in the car and I was looking at a map, and it's back in the days before you had bright lights in the
Uh-huh,
car,
uh-huh.
and she said, I just couldn't make anything out. And she carried her presbyopia chart. And she said, so I worked for 6 minutes on my presbyopia chart. And then I could read the chart, read the map. And then she said, you know, every night before I go to sleep, I just read through the whole page. And that particular chart was smaller letters than the one in this chart. And then she said, oh, there's another time that I really do the exercise. I said, what's that? She said, every year when I go for my annual exam, while I'm waiting in the waiting room for my examination, I'm doing the chart because I love to see the expression on the doctor's face when I still don't need bifocals. I had to throw that one in. But anyway, so the basis of this is it's basic. I mean, there's an idea that I got from knowing about this aspect of the eyes and how they worked, and then I had those questions. Would it actually clear things up? And if you did it enough, would it actually leave a person able to read without glasses, without having to cross their eyes at the same time? And there it was. Paul did it.
I think that's an important part that you just said. So this is an exercise because you're basically over converging. You're like focusing in front of the page to just kind of it's basically, I think of it always as like, what is the metaphor? We go to the gym, we lift these heavy weights, so that we can function more appropriately in real life and lift bags or whatever. But you know what I mean? So I think this is the kind of message. This is more like an actual convergence exercise because let me ask you this way. What I found with myself and other people in my programs is that when we have presbyopia, when we're farsighted, we also like avoiding, it's almost like, oh, I can't read this. There's immediately this kind of like, I just can't do it. But when you do this exercise, you're literally building the muscle, the physical muscle, but you're also building this mental belief that it's possible to read something up close, right? That, you know what I mean? So to me, it's a physical, but it's also a mental exercise. And because if we always avoid the close up, if we never look up close without glasses, how are we supposed to do it, right? If we never lift heavy weights, how are we supposed to lift our suitcase and put it in the overhead bin, Um, do you think that makes sense? Have you noticed that too, that there's this tendency not to even want to look up close?
Yes, yeah. And of course, the worst thing is restaurants.
Oh,
Restaurants. So you have to bring your iPhone there so you can
well,
turn your.
nowadays they make you scan a QR code and then it's on your phone. And then I honestly, this is a good question to ask you too, because I noticed that with family members and other people that have presbyopia, where they actually prefer everything on screens or iPads, and then they do that pinching. So every time, and if there's an app where you can't make it bigger, there's already this, apps usually don't allow you to do that, but you scan a website. I don't know, I just have some random website on here and you immediately do that like pinching and make it and zooming in. And I think that's what do you think of that? Let me ask you
Well,
this.
yeah, I mean, people say, well, I don't have time to do this. Well, it's pretty easy to make a chart of your email that came in
Uh-huh.
and put them in columns about the same as in the chart, my chart. Uh, and then you say, okay, I just had 14 minutes of reading this email by crossing my eyes and looking at two equally ones on each side. So that's another way to do it. Um, and I've made, I found stories that I like, you know, they might be 2 pages long, just bring it out and say, okay, so just make sure you're not straining yourself.
So tell us to before we get to questions, we have some questions on YouTube. And by the way, I see some comments on YouTube. Wow. Jane said, after convergence, I can see clearly. Wow. Like, I mean, this is a thing, right? We have to actually practice this. And yes, we might lose some muscle strength, whatever, but at the end of the day, if we never use it, we lose it. That goes for the eyes. But tell us the little story about the hair bands I thought that was so cute because I think it shows how we can use everyday objects and we don't have to just rely on, having all these charts ready. So do you want to talk about that, the
Yeah,
story?
I mean, things
Okay.
happen. I don't know. So one thing that I started doing, it occurred to me with my cat, you know, and so I began to shoot them toward her, and she
Show us
began.
what you have in your hand so that everybody knows what we're talking about. The little hair ties, right? Those black circles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those black ones.
Yeah.
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 So I would shoot him, and and then she would leave me alone for a while. Then she'd let me play something else. But anyway, so of course all these I maybe had 20 of these, and they're all on the floor, and I was bending over and picking them up and putting them back in their place. And there were two that were like this. They were on the floor, and they looked similar to each other. And I said, oh, I'm going to converge those. And I converged those, and it looked like this, the one that was in the middle, because I converged two things and made one out of the middle one. It looked like it was halfway between me and the floor. I mean, it was a solid 3-dimension. People think they have 3 dimensions and how they look, but in terms of the visual aspect of it, they're seeing other kinds of clues, like the mountains look smaller and grayer in the background. And so our brains interprets that as seeing in 3D. But to really see in what we call stereoscopic is a different thing. And so what I liked about seeing this and having it being, right halfway between me and the floor, I could actually look as if my finger was going into it. It was, or I could really feel the distance between where the middle one was and how far up it was between me and the floor.
I think you bring up an important point. So it's not just convergence and looking up close, but it's really, we looked at that with the chart, and I can share my screen again, just with going back to the presbyopia chart, how when you do it right, you have that 3D effect, right? Let me quickly show this one again. So when you do it right, you see the third dot, that fifth paragraph or columns that now gets created seems to be further away. So there's a 3D effect, and the same thing with your head ties. So when you do that convergence, right, there is this the middle, the third one, there's this three-dimensional effect, as if you're like looking at the bottom of a cup or something. It's like it's hard to describe, but what you're saying is that we might not know that our 3D vision is not that great. And I see that especially as people get older, or they have monovision where one eye is corrected for near or far, or one eye is not as strong as the other. So there's an imbalance. And so then all of a sudden you think you see, you look other, like you said, you look at other clues like, things further in the distance are not as bright, or things in the foreground move more, or whatever you use, but you're not really seeing as 3D with depth perception. So this technique is also a great way to improve your depth perception as well as your close-up vision, right? Yeah, I think that's really important to know.
Especially when you put your finger
Oh,
between,
yeah.
how it's like, wow, my finger is going in between. It feels, you can actually almost feel it in your finger.
That is cool. I have to buy some hair ties. Do you use them for your hair? Wait, how do you get to have hair ties?
Well, I can't get it to work on this little thing up here.
I love that story so much. So are you still okay to answer a few questions from YouTube? There was a
I just
couple
want to say
questions.
one other thing, because
Yes, please.
this is something you'll want to know about already.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you had those dots and you put them on, and you put that piece of paper on the wall with the dots next to each other, about, 6 millimeters of 6.
Like you mean these two dots?
Yeah. So you put them a little bit close to the, so now if you had that on the wall, just those two, and you went up and you put your nose on them, you could turn it around and do that.
Well, I could pretend they're facing me and I'm just putting my nose like really close. Yeah.
I want to actually teach you the exercise because you want it.
The diverging? You mean the
It's gonna teach
diverge?
you how to diverge.
But I think we've done this before, and I also don't want to confuse everybody here because diverging is the opposite, where you look through the pages into the distance. And that's the part that Ray knows this because that was the thing I couldn't do. I've been practicing this, Ray, like a lot with all kinds of things, all kinds of dots in my life. I do it a lot.
You're dotty.
It's gotten a lot better, but that's what you do with magic eye books, those books with the squiggly lines
Yeah.
and some of them have these little circles on top, which always help me to, just like you did it here, where you have these circles on top. And I have some books here in my bookshelf. I realized when they didn't have the circles, I had more trouble. I really, you're onto something with the having the clue. Once you see three, you're on the right track and then the magic happens, then you see all kinds of cool stuff. But if you don't have the three dots out of the two, um, well, there's questions on YouTube, Ray. Is it okay if I ask you some of
I
those
just very quickly want to just say, you've
questions?
got those two dots. You put your nose there, and then it looks like one dot. Okay, they're out here, and you put your nose on the page, right?
Okay.
And then you say, okay, I'm seeing that one dot in the middle. It looks like one dot in the middle because this side's looking at it. So then you say, okay, I'm going to back up a little bit. And what happens to most people is they look at it, so they lose.
Right, right, right.
So if you back up a little bit and you're able to keep looking at that middle one, pretty soon you can get not just 2 or 3 inches away, but you can get maybe
Mm.
5 or 6. And maybe as you practice that, you can, when I was like, I needed that too. So when I did it, I got all the way to the back of the room. It was 14 feet that I could still diverge that chart. Because the
And that
front,
was diverging, that was looking through. So I don't have those head ties,
no, you don't need the
hat
head tie.
ties. But I think this is a great exercise, what you said. I've been doing it with other things that have dots on them, sometimes even patterns. But I think it's cool with the where you slowly move it away because I always had to start close. And then I practiced starting from a further distance. And yeah, 14 inches, I don't think I've done that. I need to go back.
14
You
feet.
encouraged me to go
14
back to the
feet.
practice.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is you want to see how far back you can get and still hold it.
Right.
And then you want to see how far away you can be and be able to diverge. That you don't have to go all the way to your nose. That would be something that's what people who can't diverge very well, which is
So
not.
just so you know, guys, diverging is the opposite. You're looking through. That would be pretending to look through it's hard for me. One reason I couldn't do it, I had to actually look through, and that's why I like your hair ties, because you can actually look through them. Or I would put, I don't know if I have it here, but I would put little dots on, let me see if I have it on I always have all these pages here, but I basically could put them on a little clear film. Of course, when I'm trying to show something, I don't have it, but you know what? Yeah, here we go. So what I did, oops, uh-oh, everything is falling down. But I would do this. I would put things on clear film because I wasn't able to pretend. So, guys, just so you know, we're talking about the opposite. This is not for near vision, more for far vision. But I would actually be able to look through the page because I couldn't do it with the paper where I had to pretend to look through. So that's what you're saying. It's the opposite. So both is really important, right? What you're saying is we need to converge, look up close, but we also need to relax our eyes in the distance and do the same thing where we see three, whatever it is, dots or circles, whatever we're using. Yeah, that's really important. And you are in your 80s, right? And if I hope it's okay to say that, and you don't wear glasses. So and most eye doctors that I know wear glasses. So that's speaking to the point that what you're teaching really works.
Well, to tell the truth, I haven't practiced very much lately,
Well, your
and it's
vision is
getting a
good.
little bit harder. So maybe this will get me going again.
But you know what encouraged me about you too? Yeah, we did a whole episode on chopstick fusion, guys. So when you're on YouTube watching this, go search for chopstick fusion. But you always said, like what Paul did, you had things on your desk, you had them lying around. I use massage balls for my feet I have them in my bathroom. It's like from the book Atomic Habits too. He talks about put things into your environment, like put them somewhere where you see them. So that way, don't tuck it all away into a drawer. So that way you're like, oh, let me do a little bit of, the presbyopia chart, or let me do a little bit of the hair ties. Now I'm going to get some of them. I haven't had long hair in a long
Just
time,
look
but
on the ground; they're all on the ground all over the place. People lose
well,
them.
at your place, not at mine.
Oh,
Um,
well,
but I
maybe.
think it's a really cool way to like recognize how can we use our everyday things, how can we encourage ourselves to do these things and make them games, make them fun, instead of this exercise that we have to perform, right? That's really important. So,
Right.
um,
So, so I'm looking at a question here.
yes, please. And I'm looking on YouTube too. Okay. We can, I know last time we went for 2 hours, but we are at the hour mark, so we need to come to a close very soon. What's the question that what you want to answer?
Let's see, I can read. What a kitty.
So there was somebody asking confusing about divergence, but this we can Clear Vision Club folks with us on Zoom, Ray. We have a little private time afterwards, so we can discuss that afterwards. I just want to make sure everybody who's on YouTube has a question. So the
Well, I think,
diverging
yeah, I think, is it Stephanie Thomas?
Stephanie has a question. She talked about a kitty. I see the question about a kitty. Let's see. Oh, maybe I can come back and teach the diverging. Yes, we did an episode on divergence with the chopsticks. I know we did a whole episode on this. I will dig it out, and it's on. If you're on my YouTube, just search for Ray Gottlieb or Ray, and then those episodes will come up. Um, let's see. There was a question about amblyopia that I wanted to
Well,
ask
this,
you,
I want to
Ray.
answer the question about myopia.
Okay. Go ahead. Myopia and then amblyopia.
Right. So the question is, if you're nearsighted, then you don't need to wear glasses to see at near. And the question is, what can I do? See, so your eyes are already focused at near if you're nearsighted. But if you want to increase to really make use of this approach, then you have to put your glasses on. And now you're not going to be able to see it close. Yeah. And then you can do the exercise with your glasses on. And that's going to increase, and it's going to increase your ability to read without glasses, without bifocals. Right? So you can say, yeah, I could take my glasses off, but if you're nearsighted, it depends on the person. And you do the exercises with the glasses on, then you're going to improve your accommodation, your focusing. And you're not going to need bifocals. You may need a pair of glasses, but you're not going to need bifocals. Anyway.
So you're basically, for everybody listening, I just want to make sure everybody gets this. So when you're nearsighted, you see well up close, but you might also get presbyopia, so you might have more trouble looking up close. And what you're saying is when you put your glasses on, which are for distance, now you're making it way more challenging to look up close. So you're kind of adding a layer of difficulty by doing it with glasses when you are nearsighted. So that's what you're saying, right? So anybody that can do it without glasses easily, who's nearsighted, try it with the glasses on, adding a layer of difficulty. Basically, make it's like walking with a resistance band around your legs. Now you have to work a little bit more to do that. But there's a question that I think is really important for everybody here who has, like me, I had a squint or has an amblyopia, a lazy eye. I basically put in the chat earlier that you probably need a whole lot more exercises, like, to even have both eyes work together. But any tips for anybody who has some kind of fusion problems with their eyes working together, amblyopia, strabismus,
Okay, time-wise?
double vision, because
It will be.
yeah, that might be a case where you need more help when from someone like Hooray, and when you had your behavioral optometry practice and you help people with more complex fusion problems. But any other tips you want to give anybody here that has squint or double vision or lazy eye or any of those problems?
Uh, a lot of the times, people can't see out of both eyes at the same time.
Mm.
It's just, if you're going to look with this eye, so if you have both eyes open, uh, most people would say, oh, it's double if you're not looking, if you're converging, for example. Anyway, so there are ways of doing it. If you have, like have a little mirror, if this were a little mirror, and you put it at an angle like that, and you looked at something, the other eye, this eye, the one that sees the reflection, is going to look out the window, or So it's a way of waking up the ability of both eyes to be able to see at the same time, and then doing it more and more with more and more challenge.
Okay, I think that sounds like a whole different episode because it's with you basically you're saying we need to use I was about to say smoke and mirrors but need to add some support to get the brain to understand that both eyes can actually see something together without seeing it double or one eye only looking.
But even seeing it double, they don't see it double because if the both eyes are open, the one eye stops looking.
Well, I've seen people that have constant double vision where the brain doesn't shut. It's more rare because usually the brain is like, no, no, no. And it turns the feed from one eye off unless you patch the good eye, what they often used to do. Right. But I think that sounds like that's too much for this. We already went over an hour with on YouTube. I want to say goodbye to YouTube. I will try to get Ray back, but we have a little bit extra time here in the Clear Vision Club. So for those of you on YouTube, goodbye. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you're never gonna miss another episode, especially with Ray. And then we will continue our little private powwow here in the Clear